Aloha, Carol.
Aloha again.
We met, what was it, 2 weeks ago, I think, in
Yes.
Hawaii at a conference both of us were attending.
Yes.
And we had a session.
Yes, we did.
And the issue was?
Carol has been a lifelong victim in her own mind, and she had financial fears about the future.
Yeah.
Those two main issues.
Yes, okay. All right. Now, we used optimal EFT. We didn't use any of the previous tapping forms that you may be familiar with.
Correct.
In fact, this was, if I remember this correctly, this was your first exposure to optimal EFT. Was that correct?
My first personal exposure, you had talked about it for the Northwest Tappers Gathering.
Oh, yeah.
So I was a little bit familiar with it, but it was my first personal experience with it, yes.
Okay. All right, great. So when we sat down to have our session, I said, what's the issue? And the first thing you said was, I've been a victim all my life. Now, from a gold standard EFT point of view, that's sort of a, oh my goodness, we've got a big, broad issue that typically takes many sessions, many specific events, because there's lots of specific events that gets integrated and related into the eventually coming up, I am a victim.
Yes, it was very global.
Yeah, very global, very general. And so we were going to have one session. And I went, well, okay. But we weren't doing tapping. We were doing optimal EFT, where we bring in the unseen therapist.
Yes.
You know, the representative from the spiritual dimension, which is a far better therapist than I will ever be. Knows more about the process, knows more about what's going on with you, etc. And if I remember it right, this victim thing with you was almost perpetual, like it would show up maybe more than 10 times a day, some kind of thought, oh, I'm a victim, you know, and your self-image gets beaten down and so on. I got that right?
Yes, and in fact, if I wasn't thinking about me being the victim, I would project that other people were being a victim.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was, and it had been with me my entire life since I was a little girl.
Okay, so in the process of this, and people are listening in, and it's a sort of educational. And by the way, just to put the ending here up front a little bit, you had great results from that. We're going to discuss those later, but we basically, while it's not 100% complete, there's still a little bit left going on. We pretty much kicked the center out of it. Would you say that's correct?
Yes, very much so.
Okay. So from the educational point of view, one of the first things I asked you had to do with your own religious or spiritual leanings. That's a worthwhile question to ask if you're going to ask the spiritual dimension to come in and do some work here. And
yes.
You told me you were Christian.
Uh-huh.
So I said, well, did you want to use Jesus as the unseen therapist? And yeah, you said, no, I'd rather use the Holy Spirit. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So we just used that. And as we went through this process, you would bring in Holy Spirit, light, this kind of form. This is what you are used to.
Uh-huh.
And flooded these various issues with this healing intention. And remind me now, we dealt with a handful of specific events, did we not?
Yes, we were trying to get this hugely global thing down into a few specific incidences. So we did work on some specifics, yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, usually I would expect to have to do 10, 15, 20 specific events spread over many sessions. I think we did 2 or 3 during this 1 hour that we had. Was that right?
Yes, in fact, the session I think was even a little shorter than that, but we only did maybe 3 specifics.
Okay, and they had to do, I think, with a relative of yours?
Yes, different family family events, family issues. Yeah.
And things which, when you were younger, would say to you, "Oh, gee, I'm a victim." Okay.
Yes.
And so usually we've got to knock those down with tapping one at a time, etc. But I've seen this before, and I really want to let people know about this possibility, because it doesn't always happen, but it happens often enough. And in this case, those 2 or 3 events pretty much just spread all over the rest of them, knock them all down, mostly, to the point where I think you told me that now the idea of being a victim, instead of showing up 10 or more times a day, is like 2 times a day, and then it's very brief and goes.
Yes, it as soon as I identify it, I deal with it through our optimal, like I just revisualize our optimal session that we had, put it in my mind, put that light there, and right away it's gone. And I think the only reason it's still showing up even just a little bit is just because it's such old tapes that are were so embedded, because it's very little and it collapses very fast.
Yeah, and when you say collapses very fast, I think you told me off camera here at another discussion that it takes less than 30 seconds each time.
Yeah, oh yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
So you only have maybe something like 2 a day instead of 10 plus a day, and it lasts for hardly at all. And you also said something to me about, I forgot the way you worded that, but it had to do with your self-image.
Yes. I had mentioned to you that my internal happy meter is much bigger and stronger, and I feel like there's a more consistent smile on the inside, an emotional smile on the inside, and I really feel, kind of related to that I'm much better able to stand in my own truth and in my own identity instead of being the victim of somebody else or something else.
Yeah, because the whole notion of being a victim, is related to rejection things and self-image things, and can I stand on my own 2 feet and things like that. So it's no surprise that you would get this other level on it. I want to ask you something else.
Okay.
And this is a question you haven't been asked. I hadn't asked you before. So
okay.
Another lady at that same conference that I had a session with, name was Patsy. When Patsy finished her session, it was a different issue than yours, but when she finished her session, she ended up with what she called a sense of incredible peace, a level of peace in her system she hadn't felt before. Now, not everybody has that. I'm just wondering if that applies to you as well.
I think it does, in a little bit different terminology, because I was very positively stoked and I felt very elated, and I guess calm at the same time, but elated and happy.
Okay. And has that level, did it peak like during our session and then just kind of tailed off as life goes on, or did it stay?
Well, I wouldn't say it was quite as intense, because we were there in person together, so that was pretty awesome for me. But it stayed much higher, and that's part of that, being able to collapse into the old stuff that shows up, is that, wait a second, I'm this person now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that I've heard reports of like that once in a while using the tapping process.
Okay.
But it happens much more frequently with the optimal EFT. I'm just pointing that out for people listening in. So.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Carol, I thank you so much. Was anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I do want to say that that it was my first personal experience with the optimal EFT, and I was delighted to experience it for myself as a practitioner, so that I was on the other end of the receiving end. That was delightful. But also, as a practitioner, I wanted to mention that you had honored me during the session, because we were sitting out in a very public area on a couch, and there are people coming and going, and you honored me as a practitioner when people came to interrupt and they needed you to go and do something. 3 times you said, no, I've committed to this session and I'm in it right now, I cannot do that. And then the next one to come, and to me, I was practically in tears that you were so honoring of me, the victim. You were so honoring of me, and and that you, I can't even describe it, the fact that you stayed focused on what we were doing and didn't, as a well-known international person, go off and do something, you know, that you honored our time together. And see, that was part of, I think, this healing for this victim mindset I had. That was just another part of it.
Ah, okay. Well, that's good feedback. That's good feedback. I would not have left that session to save my soul, you know, unless there was like some earthquake or in Hawaii a volcano going off or something.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's just part of proper delivery, you know, and so that's good input for, you know, there are therapists that are and healing practitioners that are listening in. So that's, you know, that's really good input for them as well. Okay, Carol, a big hug to you, a kiss for you.
Thank you.
May you never again be a victim.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Thank you so much.
All right, bye now.